Hi there, this is Jay here from Jeremy Jacob, and very recently the government have announced their white paper report, and they are going to be looking into three things that I certainly wanted to pick up and discuss right now. First of all was the subject of pets in property. Secondly was no fault Section 21 notices sounding like they're going to be up for the job. And number three was the discrimination of, and it comes back to pets as well, discrimination of tenants with pets, children, and those on benefits. So this is an interesting topic, and believe it or not, as a letting agent, I've been doing this topic within our industry for a number of years. And let's start with the pets situation. I have noticed more and more in recent months, and I think a lot has happened with regards to COVID. A lot of people moved out of London, they got a pet, and now they're coming back to London and they need to bring their pet with them. So I think that the demand from tenants with pets has increased in London, that's for sure. Now, I grew up with a dog, and then I went off into my adulthood life. I haven't had a pet for years, and now I've got two cats in my house, and they came as kittens, and I'm going to be honest with you, they've absolutely ruined our carpet because they've been pulling it up and picking at it. And we tried to get the scratching pole, but the problem is the carpet is gone past its best. But the good news for me, our carpet, in terms of its life anyway, was beyond its best. So we decided we could take the hit with our kittens using the carpet as a sort of a strengthening ground for their claws and their development. However, what do you do though when you've got a brand new refurbishment with all new carpets, and you have a situation with pets coming in, especially puppies or kittens? It's a real thing, and I don't think this is this is something that can just be swept underneath the carpet. We have to have an open discussion about it. It's a fact of life that these things can happen. Now, my kittens are now 1 year old, and I guess that makes them a cat now, cats, and the picking at the carpet has noticeably got so much better, like rarely happens now. So I think when I look at this from my own personal perspective, an adult cat or dog that has been trained appropriately and can be demonstrated, I think there is value in that. And as a tenant, that is a conversation where we need to be encouraging landlords to maybe, if they've had doubts or thoughts against pets in the past, maybe that's something to reconsider. So with regards to pets, it's an interesting subject. I'm going to come back to it I'm going to make a point now, but I will come back to it. We come across owners of pets that they are so proud of these pets that they almost like have a CV for their pet. A type of tenant that's really good at this is we have American tenants. They love it. They do like a CV and they have a nice picture of their dog. And I think with regards to some American tenants, they have probably, from some of the properties they've rented in America, have had to jump through some much more serious and stricter hoops to be able to get their pet. If you think of the modern condominiums in America, they have strict housing associations, they've got to pay administration charges, and they have to really show that their pet is going to be okay in the property. So they come to London and they're like a fresh breeze. They show, it's almost like almost showing off their pet in an unbelievable manner that they totally can back themselves. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute because this all builds into what I want to try and say. Section 21 notice is no fault evictions. So I think it sounds like the government wants to ban it. So what does this mean potentially? It would mean that if a landlord just wanted to end the tenancy for no apparent reason, it's gone past the break clause point and they just want their property back, they can serve a Section 21 notice. Now, this has been raised because it sounds like from what the government have looked into that tenants are being served eviction unfairly. There is a subject of we call it what is known as the revenge eviction. So if a tenant and landlord maybe haven't got on in such a way, the landlord could potentially out of spite say, you know what, I'm done with you as a tenant, I'm going to serve 2 months notice in a Section 21 notice. So I think this route is to avoid stuff like that happening. It sounds like, well, my interpretation, because this has been being discussed now for, it feels like a good 1 to 2 years now of this potentially happening. There might need to be a real clear reason as to why a landlord is serving the Section 21 notice. One of the most obvious reasons would be, I need to sell it, I need to move into it myself, or any other reason. So we'll have to watch what happens there. With regards to the Section 21 notice, let me say this, when I look at all my tenants and my landlords, I have not seen a landlord need to serve a Section 21 notice because they just want to do it or they want to kick the tenant out. If a tenant is a troublesome one, supposing they have caused serious neglect or they haven't paid their rent for a period of 8 weeks or more, there are more serious routes to take to go down the process of evicting a tenant. And from my experience, if you have a tenant personality like that, they're more likely to be more difficult in moving out anyway. So if you drop a Section 21 notice on them anyway, they might just ignore it and not do anything about it. So the Section 21 notice is kind of like a mutually respectful way to end a tenancy. Okay, that's good. So why would you want to get rid of it? So when I look at all my landlords at the moment, and I look at how they are with their tenants, they are career landlords. They're in the business to rent out their asset on a long-term basis. Even the ones that have eventually come round to deciding to want to put it on the property market, it's normally, more than likely, 95% of the time, they arrive to that decision after the tenancy has naturally ended. So they don't actually serve the break clause to say, hey, I need to end the tenancy because I need to put the property on the market. So my experience of this is maybe a little bit different to the wider United Kingdom, potentially. Once again, I'm a letting agent in London. So my experience is that if you have a tenant and a landlord where the relationship has really broken down, I normally find that we'll get to the end of the natural tenancy and then there's a mutual decision that it's probably best that the tenant goes on their merry way and the landlord takes the property back to the market. A Section 21 notice, if it's used on a naughty tenant who's just not paying their rent, being really difficult, bunkering down in the property, refusing to leave, then we have to go down much more serious measures. And it involves a solicitor, certainly, in doing things in a correct and legal manner. So I have to watch to see what happens on that. But I can see potentially what's going to happen is that a landlord will have to put a clear reason on the Section 21 notice, or a different type of document, might be coined something different, why they're serving notice, and it must be for one of a few clear reasons. So we'll wait to see on that. With regards to discrimination against families with children and also people on benefits, and now I'm going to come back to the pets thing, I'm going to say this, from my experience as a letting agent and dealing with lots of landlords and lots of tenants, I'm going to come at it from this point of view. I look at renting a property to a tenant candidate a little bit similar, like you're going for a job. So tenants, if they rock up to a property and they are argumentative, arrogant, I will, that will register with me as the agent and go, okay, that I have had an insight into your personality, no different to meeting with a candidate for a job for the first time. If a tenant goes for an offer process and they have their offer accepted, I will also look at the way they were in their conduct in negotiating the rent. So tenants sometimes aspire to offer a negotiated rent, no different to an employee maybe negotiating on their salary. But the way you do it in that moment is interesting and is important, because it's the way your personality comes across in the way you do it. You can do things in a graceful way, or you can do things in quite an antagonistic way, which may reveal what you might be like to work with as a personality in the workplace, and similarly how you will be as a tenant. So when we get an offer accepted on a property, it's really interesting at that point is how the tenant conducts themselves through the referencing process. So from my experience, the tenants that are eager to please, they want to quickly gain their references, gain their documents, they almost want to just show how good they are, almost like in a people-pleasing way. From my experience, this is a really good insight into how they will be as a tenant. So, for example, I've been in the past, I'll be doing a reference process with someone and I will obviously need to gain something like a work reference. And if there's a long delay and I'm trying to check in to see how that reference is going and no one's come back to me from the tenant side, I have to follow up. And then I'm getting sort of weird deflection angles and things like that. We request to see some financials on them and what they're showing and what they said was the case in the beginning. We can't see any evidence of a history of paying rent or salary coming in. Things aren't going straight forward. There are delays, and then when we're asking for information, we start to receive a degree of a different type of the side to the behaviour, the personality. They can become maybe a little bit more argumentative and revealing potentially what could be difficulty as a personality. So a great tenant candidate for me would be, they make their offer, they have it accepted, they're super happy. We ask them for various documents, so we want to see verification of their work, financials, identification, and a landlord reference, maybe a character reference. And what they do is they, ta-da, almost like I had already been working on this, and they have all their ducks in order, and the process has been seamless. Any questions or curious questions, letting agents are very curious people, because we want to make sure that everything cross-checks. So when we look at maybe financials, we're going to maybe look at the address on those financials. Does it weigh up? Does it cross-check with the existing tenant's address? Does their employment reference also show that salary that is named in that employment reference? Does it cross-check with their financials that they've produced? Does it all stack up? Does their identification, the name on it, is the same as what you see on the address? Are there any little red flags where we have to go back and investigate some more? So if all of this is done really quickly and seamlessly, for me, this shows how proud someone is in their own housekeeping. And that tends to transfer into how they are as a tenant, potentially how well they'll keep a property. And it doesn't matter for me if you have pets, or if you have children, or if you're on benefits. If you are organised and you are willing to be transparent and to be inviting and communicative, for me, from my experience, this shows how you will be as a tenant. Your personality, how you will be throughout your tenancy. we as the agent, if we're managing your tenancy, we're going to have a relationship, we're going to get to know each other, and we have to work together. And, you know, as an agent, it's always a little bit daunting at times when you have to hand that relationship over to a landlord. And sometimes you will have some landlords that you think, oh, your personality, will it match up the personality of this tenant? I wish I was the wall here for my landlord, because I just have a feeling that this would go so much nicer. So that's a story for another day. I value property management in a big way, and I think we can add value to a lot of our landlords. So the long story short is pets, people with children, families with children, if you're on benefits, I personally, from my experience, treat everything the same. And what I'm looking for is your conduct and your behaviour throughout the process, from the moment I meet you, do the viewing, your organisation, have your ducks in a row until conclusion. And the swifter we can do it, the more seamless we can do it, that says to me, you have all the ingredients for being a great, fabulous tenant. I will say this finally, I have thought more about the pets. I think as well, I think a lot of landlords have been feeling slightly aggrieved that ever really since the George Osborne and David Cameron government, that the clamp has been coming in a little bit tighter on landlords in terms of taxes and what they can claim back and the things they've got to do, and the EICR regulations that came in, that's about electricity, and now potentially this, that it's off-putting for landlords to be a landlord. But what I do think is that it just makes this market, this industry set up to be better quality. I think, and I have personally known some people who have been landlords where maybe they have tried to also buy their properties potentially on utilising too much leverage and debt, and what it potentially means is that you can't give a property its proper due care and attention, because you need to always be investing in it. What this might mean is that as a landlord, you might have to say, look, I aspire to get another property to add to my portfolio. You might have to accept that your one or two more that you want to aspire for in however period of time you sort of set your goals for, you might have to accept, no, I have to just bunker down on the ones I've got, invest in them, because there's EPC agendas coming up in the future as well, which means that landlords are going to have to definitely invest in their property to make them more energy efficient than they already are. Focus on your lot and bunker down, invest in those, make them better quality, attract the tenants because you have a better product. And I think that's the way the industry goes. The ones that want to get out because they've had enough, that's fine, because property is there's always such a demand for property. And I think all it's going to do over time is just make a better quality for the industry, and I think it will all work out. So those are my thoughts today I'm sharing with you. Let's see what happens with this government white paper, and we'll wait to see what happens next. All the best, speak to you soon.